wormholes, particle physics, extra dimensions. Are the wonders of so-called reality really what they appear to be? Or do we exist in an elaborate hologram? Is our universe the result of random activity or the result of intelligent design? If a creator was involved, can we discover him through our perception of divine order? This is Into the Multiverse with Josh Peck.
What can the book of Enoch and the knowledge of the Watchers, what can that tell us about our Bible? And what has the church maybe suppressed, knowingly or unknowingly, who knows? But what can Enoch and some of these other things teach us? In studio with me, as always, my lovely, beautiful wife, Christina Peck. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm not always here.
Well,
that's a lie.
I'm saying, as always, you're lovely and beautiful.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah. Yeah, you need to get the grammar right there. You put the comma in the wrong spot.
I'm sorry.
You're always putting the comma in the wrong spot.
This is true. With my
It's
writing.
the biggest problem in our marriage.
It's the biggest problem in my writing career.
You're doing okay, man.
Yeah, I'm good.
We're doing okay.
We're good.
And also in studio with us is Dr. Michael Heiser, author of the phenomenal book, Reversing Hormone, and of course, The Unseen Realm. It's great to have you back.
Thank you.
So there's a lot of Bible passages that some of which we hear in church sometimes if we're lucky, some of which we don't, but we never really get the full story. That's what I love about your books, and especially this recent one and your podcast, by the way, which for people out there who have been following my ministry and, know little things that I post here and there. I don't ever post podcasts because I usually don't listen to them. When I listen to a podcast, my mind wanders and I can't retain anything. I got to be watching something or reading something. But yours is one of the only ones that the only one I can sit and listen to and get a lot out of. So that's what I've been doing for this whole past week. One thing that's really interesting, so I figure we could just go through some Bible verses and passages for the audience that may be familiar with some of these, but there's a lot to unpack in all these, so we probably won't get to all of them, but we can get through a few. I figure we can just take them one at a time.
That's fine.
I'll take the first one.
Go right ahead.
You had the first question last time.
I don't mind sharing.
1 Peter 3:18 through 22.
Oh, yeah.
What's going on here? I'll read it for the audience. For Christ also suffered once for sins, the just for the unjust, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but made alive by the Spirit, by whom also he went and preached to the spirits in prison, who formerly were disobedient, when once the divine long-suffering waited in the days of Noah, while the ark was being prepared, in which a few, that is 8 souls, were saved through water. This is also an antitype which now saves us, baptism, not the removal of the filth of the flesh, but the answer of a good conscience toward God through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who has gone into heaven and is at the right hand of God, angels and authorities and powers having been made subject to him. There's a lot going on there, and this is one of the most confusing passages for even a lot of pastors.
Yeah, this is the one, if any of your listeners have read my book, The Unseen Realm, this is the passage where I relate the anecdote that I went to church one day, and I was excited because he was going through the book of 1 Peter, and here we are, because I love this passage. And he literally got up in the pulpit and said, I have no idea what this means. We're just going to skip it.
Oh my gosh.
Well, at least he was honest.
I know. It's like, I couldn't believe it. I've never heard or seen anybody do that.
Oh my goodness.
So I was offended. There are some keys here. It's strange, but it's really not that difficult if you make one or two little sort of mental adjustments. Now, the translation you quoted had the word antitype in it, which is really important. The reference to the resurrection is important. The reference to being exalted above the principalities and powers is really important. What's going on here is, if you think, let me use a more familiar example. Paul in Romans 5 talks about Jesus and Adam. Okay, he's drawing some analogy there. And Adam, the text says at one point, is a type of Christ. Now, a typology is a non-verbal prophecy.
Okay.
Prophecy is something uttered about the future. A type would be an institution or an event or a person, again, that just prefigures something to come. So Paul his point is basically Adam. There's something going on about Adam and what Adam did that prefigured something that was going to happen later with Jesus. Well, if you can understand that, when you go to 1 Peter 3, here's what you have to understand. Just as Adam was a type of Jesus for Paul, so Enoch is a type of Jesus for Peter.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Now, if you can make that adjustment, and if you knew the Watcher version, the Watcher story of what happens with Genesis 6 and the ultimate destiny, okay, of the fallen Watchers, they're sent to the abyss and they're imprisoned, spirits in prison, second, Peter, Jude, all that language. If you know that backstory, then what Peter's doing is he's assuming his readers know the content like he does of the book of Enoch at this point. They know the story of the Watchers and their transgression and what happened to them. And that for him prefigures something about Jesus. Now the story as told in Enoch is the Watchers fall, they get sent to the abyss, and now, we're sorry now because, hey, we don't like this place. And so, and so they contact Enoch and they say, God really likes you, so can you run interference for us and tell God we're sorry and we want to get out of here? And Enoch says, yeah, I'll do that. So the story has Enoch going to God, giving him the whole spiel, and God says, forget it. Just tell him that ain't going to happen. The answer's no.
Yeah.
Then Enoch visits them in prison, in the abyss, in the underworld, okay? Announces their judgment to them again, and then that's that. So for Peter, it's like, well, when Jesus died and went into the afterlife, Sheol, the underworld, where everybody goes, he preaches to the spirits that are in prison. In other words, he has a message for the Watchers. And just like the first one, this one ain't good either.
Right.
This is not going to make them happy, okay? Because they're thinking if he shows up there, it's like, wow, somebody pulled it off. They got rid of the Messiah. And the game has changed. And Jesus is like, no, not so much. Okay, I'm here now, but I'm not going to be here very long.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's really about theological messaging that gets connected to the resurrection. Okay, the antitype is the resurrection. And the whole thing about having the good conscience and whatnot is, again, I discuss this a lot in the book, that conscience there isn't this moral gyroscope between right and wrong. It's about a disposition of making a right choice. And the right choice in this case is embracing the news of the gospel and Jesus and the resurrection. And that's how we're saved. But it connects all these flood ideas, all stuff that's going on in Genesis 6, with the spirits in prison, with being exalted above the principalities and powers. If you don't have the backstory in your head, like Peter assumes you do, this is going to look hopeless.
Yeah.
But if you do, you know how to read him. In other words, you will know what he was trying to communicate. And it really turns baptism into spiritual warfare.
That's awesome.
Because when you get baptized, it's not only a public testimony to the people watching you. In some way, it's a re-telegraphing theologically of, this is the side I'm on now. I am no longer owned by the Lord of the dead, or if I'm a Gentile, by one of the the fallen sons of God. Okay, I am switching sides. So it re-announces their loss, their demise to them.
Wow, that's really cool.
That's incredible.
It's
really
interesting too how Enoch ties into all that. Well, what about the lake of fire and even our new spiritual bodies? If we have time for both, we'll get to them right after this.
I will ascend into heaven. The war began in Eden when the dragon, known as Nakash, lured Adam and Eve into sinning with the lie, "Ye shall be as gods." I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. Soon, humans multiplied upon the earth, and rather than worship God, they fell down at the feet of dragons. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation. But it wasn't enough for the dragons. They wanted to do more than just own mankind. They wanted to destroy them, to forever keep them from re-entering the divine council.
I will ascend above the heights of the clouds.
The war raged on, where fallen angels descended onto mountaintops, spreading fear and false doctrine. It is a war for the souls of men, and only a Savior's blood could change the outcome.
I will be like the Most High.
Satan and his minions go by many names and wear many faces, but their strategy has always been to imitate God's truth. We call this war for men's minds the Great Inception. Learn the secret history of the spiritual war. Learn the names of the deceivers and what their true aims really are. Learn where they have struck and where they will strike again before it's too late. The Great Inception.
We're in the middle of a battlefield surrounded by an enemy that we've been told doesn't even exist. The pagan gods are imaginary, we've been taught, just lifeless blocks of wood and stone. The Great Inception shatters that illusion. It took me 2 years to pull this information together, research into archaeology, history, ancient languages, to show that the Bible stories you've known since childhood are actually literal accounts of supernatural warfare between God and the rebel gods who decided to reject the authority of their creator. My hope is that after reading The Great Inception, you come away with just one question. Why haven't we heard this in church before?
You've been fighting in a war against an enemy you've been told doesn't even exist. Skywatch TV wants to change that to prepare you for the battles ahead. Beginning March 7th, exclusively from Skywatch TV, the Cosmic War Collection finally arrives. Featuring 3 groundbreaking books, a 5-hour DVD, and a 7-hour audio series showing you how real the supernatural War of Kingdoms actually is. Reversing Hermon by acclaimed Bible and ancient language scholar Dr. Michael S. Heiser, and The Great Inception by Skywatch TV's Derek P. Gilbert. You'll learn how Christ's full mission has been misunderstood for 2,000 years. Not only did he come to shed his blood to redeem mankind, Jesus was on a mission to reverse the sin of the angelic watchers who descended on Mount Hermon. You'll also discover how Bible stories you've known since childhood were literal battles in the spirit realm between God and the gods who rebelled. When you order the Cosmic War Collection from Skywatch TV, you'll receive Reversing Hermon by Dr. Michael S. Heiser, The Great Inception by Derek P. Gilbert, a new, exclusive, never-before-offered deluxe hardcover collector's edition of the Book of Enoch. The Real Clash of the Titans DVD, a special, never-before-released video compilation with 5 hours of teaching on the long war between God and the gods. And The Unseen Adversary, a brand new audio series on MP3 disc with 7 hours of Derek P. Gilbert interviewing Dr. Michael Heiser on the Watchers, UFOs, and the Great Cosmic Rebellion of Satanic Forces. A value of more than $100, yours for just $29.95. The Cosmic War Collection, available beginning March 7th only from Skywatch TV. Know your enemy. Order the Cosmic War Collection beginning March 7th by calling 844-750-4985 or log on to skywatchtvstore.com.
Welcome back to Into the Multiverse. I don't want to waste a lot of time saying a bunch of stuff because there's some other really cool stuff that I want to bring up. The lake of fire, Matthew 25:41 says, "Then he will also say to those on the left hand, 'Depart from me, you cursed, into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels.'" In a biblical context, there's some stuff we can glean there, but what about Enoch? What does Enoch have to tell? What's the whole story here?
I mean, if you've ever asked yourself the question, okay, where does Matthew get this idea? Mm-hmm. I mean, you look back in your Old Testament and you really can't find it. You know, this idea of the devil and his angels.
Yeah.
Sure, you have references to Satan. You never have Satan, discussed in the Old Testament where he has like buddies, like a gang that works with him. Right? You never have this. You never have the mention of a lake of fire. Mm-hmm. So where does this collection of ideas come from? And the actual honest answer is, this is a good instance in Matthew and other places where it's very clear that they're reading the books of Enoch, First Enoch specifically, and other Enochian material, and which is why I made it part of the book that it's very clear that they were drawing on a set of ideas that if you sort of know how they were thinking about it, and the only way you're going to know that is if you had read Enoch. Mm-hmm. But if you had read that, then you can go back to your Old Testament and go, oh, okay, here's how they took this passage and married it to that one. The Rephaim and Sheol, the bad guys are there, and it's a fiery place. And I mean, you can see how the parts are assembled. Mm-hmm. It's just we don't get that in the Old Testament. We get that in a book like First Enoch. And that's why when Matthew and others draw from that, people know, they get what they're talking about, mm-hmm. because that material was familiar to them. Whereas us, as modern Christians, Enoch and Enochian material like the Book of the Giants or whatever, that is totally off the radar mm-hmm. for us. And so, as I try to make the case in the book that, look, you don't have to consider First Enoch canonical, like it should be in the Bible. I don't. But to me, that question isn't even important. You should read it and know it pretty well, because if you do, there will be places in the New Testament that you'll be reading something and you'll track on something that okay, this is going to be linked back to this other thing that isn't in my Bible, but it's evident that the writer read this and, mm-hmm. and wrote about it. Mm-hmm. It informed what he was doing. And so if I can understand that, this helps me understand what the biblical writer wanted me to get.
Right.
In other words, I won't miss it,
mm-hmm.
or I won't substitute something else in its place. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be able to understand what he said in context because I have this backdrop now.
Was the Book of Enoch, was that something that first century Jews considered canonical or as like everything in there is as trustworthy as, say, like the Book of Isaiah or anything that we mm-hmm. would consider? Or was it just something that was just more popularized? And
yeah, it was, there were some Jews who quoted it as scripture. Mm-hmm. In other words, they used the same formulaic language as it says or as it is written. They'll use that of biblical material and then Enoch too. Mm-hmm. So that does happen. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. Same thing with the early church. You had a few defenders of Enoch, that it should be in our New Testament. Mm-hmm. In the book, in Reversing Hermon in the back, I have a whole appendix of this discussion, Jewish groups, and I give you the citations, I give you the primary texts of where Enoch was quoted as scripture by early Jews, early Christians, and sort of, so people are familiar with the debate. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, I can't remember, I think it was either Irenaeus or Tertullian toward the end of his life, more or less said, hey, I've been defending this thing the whole time, and I'm looking around and I'm getting old and nobody's really buying it.
So I must be wrong.
Right. Well, and that's what he said. He said they assumed that the Holy Spirit would guide his people en masse toward the truth, toward what they should recognize as canonical. And he admitted that, that hasn't happened with Enoch, so it's okay with me. I'm giving it up. I'm not going to worry about it. And that, if you really think about it, that's really a good attitude, to have. But there were some who really defended it at that level. But again, to me, the question is sort of a distractor. Don't worry about the old debate or generating a new debate. Should we have Enoch in our Bible? Just go read the thing.
Yeah.
We have access to it.
It's going to help you understand a number of passages.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you take that last one about...
Okay. Going back to 1 Corinthians, this time chapter 15, verse 53, talks about our new bodies. For this perishable body must put on the imperishable, and this mortal body must put on immortality. Mm-hmm. What is it saying about our new bodies here?
Yeah, there's a whole lengthy discourse, not just in material that we would either consider biblical or, kind of right up against, stuff that links into the Bible, but the whole secular Greek tradition. To them, the phrase spiritual body was not an oxymoron. Mm-hmm. They believed that this other body, and again, it's even hard to talk about it, but this other body was actually made of something.
Right.
It was made of stuff, and that was celestial stuff. It wasn't human stuff. It was more than human stuff. And some of the vocabulary Paul uses in 1 Corinthians 15 is drawn right out of that discussion. So his readers, again, would have known that he's not talking about believers becoming, ethereal spirits that, float around in the quantum world or something like that. Even though deities, divine beings in these religions outside the Bible had those capacities to move beyond what we thought were our boundaries, our physical boundaries, they could still do that. But they were still made of something. And that something could be corporeal. Okay, and again, as odd to our ears as that seems, that's really what Paul is drawing on. And I think even more tellingly in biblical theology, if you think again back to Eden, okay, where did all this start? This started, as I talk about an unseen realm a lot, where God wanted to have a human family. But the human family his purpose was to integrate the human family with the divine family. Eden was where God lived. Eden was God's headquarters, that sort of thing. God wanted a blended family with one purpose, and that was to serve him and make this place like Eden was, to spread his goodness and his glory. And he tasks them with, the humans with that task. He has divine beings that are disembodied or could take on bodies doing things in their own realm. What was supposed to be one family ultimately, where humanity, even though not created like one of them, to be one of them, would actually enter into that ontology. They would actually become divine. And of course they fail in Eden. But what Paul's saying is, look, there's going to come at some point, and the crucial point here is the resurrection of Jesus, because Jesus did get a body. Okay, it was the same Jesus. Yes, it's not a different Jesus. It's Jesus. But his flesh is now celestial flesh. And that is going to be transmitted and given to us so that we, just like we were intended to be, we will be divinized. We will be made divine. We will be integrated into the divine family and have bodies still, but something beyond human bodies. So it's another way of Paul saying it's going to come full circle.
In your opinion, when you die, what happens?
I think to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. We have some sort of embodied existence because of the way the dead are talked about. They see each other. I mean, you've got to be something in front of you to see. And it's difficult even for scriptural writers because they're talking about a realm and an existence that is foreign, totally foreign to their own. And they have to use space-time language with latitude and longitude and embodied existence to do it. So it's a tough job. But I do think we're with the Lord ultimately. Whether we get an upgrade, on whatever that body is at the end or not, I don't necessarily know. I tend to think that when we exist as glorified believers on the new earth, okay, that might be different just because heaven isn't the new earth yet. I mean, obviously it's like two things that are intimately related, but they don't have to be exactly the same. Ultimately, we are the ones who displace and replace the fallen gods of the nations. Okay, this is, when people, when I get into this, I have to assume that they know a little bit about the Deuteronomy 32 worldview and cosmic geography and things like that. But
well, luckily we did a whole program the last time you were here on that. Yeah,
that's true. So hopefully people, caught that. But the other nations were put under other gods, and they rebelled. They're in rebellion. They have to be judged. That's what Psalm 82 is about. And ultimately, they will be displaced. There's a reason why when Paul talks about the resurrection, go check it out. When Paul talks about the resurrection, the way we hear it preached is, oh, I get a new body. And that's true. Paul does talk about that. But there are a half dozen passages where Paul, in the same breath as resurrection, talks about either Jesus or us or both being exalted above the principalities and powers. That's not an accident, because in Paul's mind, the resurrection is the thing that delegitimized the gods of the nations so that the Gentiles could confidently say, we get to go back into the family. We get to rejoin the people of God. the strongholds are broken, all this sort of thing. And he connects that with their loss of their populations through the gospel, and also ultimately their destruction in the day of the Lord, which is why Paul says, hey, don't you know that you're going to rule over angels? If you know about the divine council hierarchy, the three-tiered sons of God, the family term is in the middle. Malach is a lower term. These are the ones that occupy the nations, or are supposed to. Again, there's this whole backdrop. But Paul says, don't you know that you're going to judge angels? You're going to rule over angels. John in Revelation 2 and 3 says, to him that overcomes, I will put him over the nations. Mm-hmm. It's not a throwaway line. It's saying you, believers, are going to displace and replace the fallen beings that have charge of these nations now. You're going to be not only in my family, again, made part of the divine family as originally intended, but you get to occupy this task role. And you say, well, what does that mean? Well, it means a whole lot more than harps and floating on clouds and singing 18 million choruses of Just As I Am. Okay? Right. It means you're going to be busy. It means heaven is going to be like Eden was and the earth was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And there will be a lot to do there. There'll be a lot to enjoy there. Mm-hmm. There'll be relationships between God's risen imagers. I think to have a new earth, you're going to have it repopulated as Eden with animal life and plant life. And there's a reason why it's described this way at the end. We're going to serve God however He wants us to serve and maintain this place and enjoy Him forever.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Well, if people want to know more about you or your work, where can they go?
drmsh.com is my homepage. Since we brought up the podcast, I'll give that.
Yeah.
nakedbiblepodcast.com. By the way, the term Naked Bible, the inference there is we just try to do the Bible without filtering it through creeds and subcultures, denominational traditions. We just try to do the text. So nakedbiblepodcast.com, those are the two main sites.
Fantastic. Awesome. And of course, we absolutely recommend all of Michael Heiser's work, but make sure you definitely pick up Reversing Hermon. And we went through all the information on that, on how to get a hold of that in the trailer and commercial that you saw earlier. So all that being said, I want to thank you all for joining us in this very special episode of Into the Multiverse. As always, take care and God bless.